everybody, it's Joanne Fedley here, and this is Ask Me Anything, your writing questions answered. So today I'm going to look at the question of how do you use backstory, how do you actually use the idea of bringing in a character's history to reveal something about them, and what is the difference between backstory, flashback, and character memories? Fantastic question. So when we're telling a story, we have got what we call the front story. And the front story is the story that you are unfolding through the writing. Something is happening, something is motivating your character. We start off with the action. We always want to start off with the action, and we want to get our readers truly engaged and interested in our character. But behind the scenes, underneath that front story, there is always going to be a backstory. And if you like to think of it, it's like the front story is what we see, but the backstory is almost like the undercurrent that is running underneath the story. And this backstory, which will often include what we call a backstory wound, which happened way back in the character's history, is going to, every now and again, it's kind of going to seep into the front story. The character is going to give something away about this backstory. And it really is the reason why the character is the way that he or she is. That backstory will have defined who our main character is. So it's very, very important that that backstory starts to insinuate itself, and it will often come out in the things that a character says, in the way a character reacts to things. You might use symbolism or setting in order to let that backstory come through. And at some point in the narrative, that backstory, which is underneath, and that front story are going to come head to head in a proper scene, which you will probably use a full-on flashback to take us back into that backstory moment where we totally understand why the character is the way they are. It's the real reason that that character is the way they are, and will often have strong links to whatever your themes are that you are exploring. So backstory is there, it's always under your story, and it's going to seep out in the way the character behaves, the things they do, the things they say. You're going to always be using that. Flashbacks are scenes, actual segments of narrative that you very carefully employ with a kind of an opening. It might have its own little story arc. It might be a kind of a complete sub-theme. It might be a subplot. And you might use them strategically to take us back into different parts of your character's history in order to shed some light on the character, to build up a complex picture of who this character is. So your flashbacks could be complete standalone chapters or different scenes within a longer chapter of yours where you're going to take us back into a moment from a character's history, which will shed light on a relationship, a moment in their childhood, something that has happened in the past. And you can use lots and lots of flashbacks to build up this picture also of who your character is. So it's literally taking us back to another story, another time that seemingly perhaps has nothing to do with the front story, but as you are masterfully writing this piece, you are slowly building up an idea for the reader of who your main character is. And as these flashbacks start to build, we start to get a much better idea, a bigger picture of who our character actually is. So we think very carefully about the moments of flashback where we're going to take the reader back in time to a different time. And you must be sure that the reader understands that this is a different time. So be sure to use context, landscape, setting in a way that allows the reader to understand, how old the character is, where the character is, what's going on for the character, since you are now moving out of the front story and taking us back into a previous time with perhaps something that is almost like a subplot or a different kind of thematic idea that you're exploring through these different flashbacks. They kind of stand alone. You enter the scene of the flashback. It has its own trajectory and it ends. And then you would perhaps come back to the front story. Another thing that we can use as writers is what's called characters remembering or character memories. And this would come out with a character either using dialogue, telling another character about something that happened in his or her past. And it would be a kind of a moment of connection between two characters, perhaps a secret that is being revealed, or something that has happened to the character in the past that they are now sharing with another character in that particular story. And the character will reveal their backstory often by the way that they tell the story, by perhaps the point of view that they take or the interpretation they have of a particular event. That's going to give us a lot of information about the backstory wound, about who that character is in the way that they share that particular story. Because what you might do as an author then is you might go back, do a flashback where you go back to that particular moment in time, and you might tell it from a different point of view, or you might just change the way in which that story is being told, so that we see that perhaps the way the character remembered it or the way the character is sharing it is perhaps not the way that it really happened, or that there were many interpretations of that particular memory. So there are so many ways in which we can use history and memory to take our reader out of the front story and help them to understand the greater complexity of who our character is. So I hope you have a lot of fun exploring all of that. Please, if you have any other questions about your writing, please be sure to email my team, admin@joannefeder.com, and I will be sure to answer them.